At some point of your life, you have said goodbye to something valuable. You've said goodbye to something that is less valuable. And every time we say those goodbyes, they take away pieces of our hearts. And today I want to reflect on the value of our goodbyes and their link to our human connections. Because there is a saying that every goodbye breaks your heart right before it opens the door to a beautiful new beginning. And the only way those goodbyes will break your heart is if they were built on meaningful connections. If your goodbyes are weak, if they are not painful, if they don't drench something out of you, then today I want to talk about how you connect, how you relate, how you invest in people, in dreams, in things, enough that they break your heart if ever there was to be that miserable goodbye moment. At the same time, we come to places and times in our lives when those goodbyes are very important, when they are meaningful, when they are thoughtful. And some of us are hanging on to things past those goodbye moments. We are hanging on to dead dreams. We are hanging on to heavy dead relationships. We are hanging on to places and homes where we need to step away from, just as much as we need to build those connections and step into new identities and move to new locations and new places. So connections is the topic of our today's discussion, but we have to link that with goodbyes. We have to link that with the here and the now before we can connect. Who connects is you. You bring your purpose, you bring your value, you bring your emotions, you bring everything that embodies you to every connection link in your life, whether it be a place, a person, a relationship, or anything else. And so this topic of connecting starts with yourself. As human beings, we want to be seen, even when we are doing so much to hide. We hide all the ugliness, we hide all the mistakes, we hide the vulnerabilities, and we hide all those things that are shameful and painful. And yet we show up wanting to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be appreciated, to be validated, and therefore only presenting and connecting with half the value, half the person, and half the identity that we embody. So connecting starts from yourself, inside out, being mindful, being reflective, being able to connect with your mind, your body, your emotions, and how those align with the dreams that you seek for your employment, for your children, for your relationships. It all adds up, that you show up and be taken for the value of what you want as the outcome of those connections. And therefore, when you come to deciding whether to say goodbye or to grow new stems and new roots, they also have to align, because that connection is going to come back to impact on you in one way or the other. But most importantly, you have to first impact on those connections. That's the other thing. We always look for the outcome without seeing the input that we bring into those chains that come back to chain us. In some cases, you start off as the teacher. What do you bring to your connecting rings? And at some points, what do you learn from those connections? That's something that you need to be able to reflect on quite deeply. Your attachment models, your past relationships and trust and distrust and pain and hurt and experiences that define you are going to come through you to reflect in your new connections. My name is Asa, and I welcome you warmly to our own little corner here in the internet where we connect in our own way. And here on Clear Minds and Self-Healing, the purpose of our connection is to share mutual knowledge, to support each other, with the intention of growth, healing, and empowerment, first for ourselves and then for those around us. So, how can we build on these healthy and meaningful connections? The first way you should connect with anyone or anything or any dream is with heart. Because if you bring that individual to that connection table, what you're presenting is pieces of yourself. And heart is the purpose, the value that defines you. Heart is human empathy and how we relate with each other. When your heart is connected to something, it endures the test of anything that will be thrown at you within that connection. It will withstand any human criticism. Those voices in your head that say that you may or may not have been appreciated, because it wasn't about popularity and criticism or belonging. It was about you wanting to give a service, you wanting to help a person, you showing genuine love for a place or person or thing. Finally, the beautiful way to connect is to embrace vulnerability. A lot of us struggle with connecting and connections, both in relationships and employment and everything else, because we struggle with vulnerability. How can I show them so much pain? How can I show them so much weakness? And when you define your relationships by strength or ego that is not real, those are already starting off in dodgy and weak spots. Embracing vulnerability gives you power to work on it as you connect with others. It gives them power to help in ways that they can, and it sets you up with a true purposeful connection that cannot be minimized. Here at Clear Minds and Self-Healing, we encourage, motivate, and empower you to build silent connections. It's not about the noise. It's not about the class. It's not about the standing. It's about how firmly you stand on your own feet in the definition of who you are and what you want and how you represent you every day of your life. That silence that is powerful and unshakable, that only you can build without screaming for recognition, without demanding explanations, just being and pulling everyone in by the beautiful value of your weaknesses and your strengths and how you accept them all. And as you stand tall and strong in that solitude, also seeking a belonging that is external, connecting outside of yourself with a religion, with a belief, with a sisterhood, with a brotherhood, with a family standing that is beautiful and purposeful and coming from your heart. Because that's the way to give. That's the way to contribute. That's the way to show up with heart and purpose and a belief that will stand adversity, criticism, and all the insecurities that push us out of relationships and connections because we think they did or didn't do something that we expected. We wanted to achieve this but didn't, because we are looking at the outcomes of popularity and everything else as opposed to the input that we're bringing into those relationships. We find unity in groups. Think about football. Think about all those things like grief when we come together, forgetting how contrary we are in everything else. How we didn't even speak to each other yesterday. We don't like each other, but we show up for those uniting aspects to mourn and then go back to saying nothing because it was important to be empathetic, to celebrate together as football teammates, as national teammates, as religious believers, and as human beings, where we show up and we support and we empathize with each other. But you can only do that by bringing who you are and being who you are in those circles. A server, a person who embodies the values that you must embrace, those that you must enhance in your new connections, and those that you must say goodbye to in those that are holding you back and trying to own you and not really aligning. Say goodbye to the dead connections, which are the things that have already gone by, good or bad. The glorious days that no longer serve your purpose. Because sometimes we get stuck in those I was Mr. Mrs. this people. But what purpose do those identities and relationships and places serve you today? To say goodbye or to grow new roots? That's our message for today. And as always, go home and share it and motivate and empower other people in your life to evaluate their connections, but most importantly, to build new ones from the heart.